All right, ladies and gentlemen, for this presentation, we're going to talk about the immune and the integumentary system. Technically, these are two body systems, although the integumentary system is really just your skin. But the reality is that they serve similar purposes when it comes to the body, so we're going to talk about them as a unit. And so to get right into that purpose, the main purpose of the immune and the integumentary system is about protection. The integumentary system itself creates a separation between your internal environment and the external environment in which you exist, which is a very important thing for maintaining homeostasis. Um, and the immune system itself is a incredibly structured and detailed system whose whole thing is about fighting off microorganism invaders, which come in many forms, as we're going to talk about. But our first look here is going to be at the integumentary system itself. So your integumentary system is your skin, and your skin is gigantic. I mean, it's everywhere. You have it all over your body. There's very few openings to the skin, and so when we talk about the skin, we generally talk about it in terms of, you know, a cross section of a piece of it, where there are this cross section sort of repeats itself everywhere. And obviously there might be like some slight different structures depending on where the skin is, but the basic sense of the repeating structure is the same. So a couple things about the skin. First off, your skin has layers. You have the epidermis, which is the outermost layer of your skin. And the epidermis is not, technically non-living. That's why you can like scratch yourself, and if it's not too hard, it doesn't really hurt. It just feels weird. And that just sort of forms a protective coating on the outside of your skin. As skin cells in the dermis like divide, they push the old cells up, and those old cells, which are dead, have sort of chemical structures inside of them that allow it to, form that waterproof solid coating. Now, you'll notice here in the diagram that there are some things that sort of go through the epidermis from the dermis, and that's things like the hair. And this part of the hair down here is living, and those cells divide and make it grow and stuff, and then the dead part sticks out. You also notice that there's pores on your skin, all right, so the little holes that help keep it healthy. They secrete chemicals and stuff that maintain the skin as like a healthy, normal structure. And you'll notice down here that what secretes sweat is actually glands that are inside that dermis or the subcutaneous layer. You'll notice down here that there are nerve endings. And you notice that the nerve endings don't really extend all that high up into the skin. All right. Instead, the nerve endings are sort of lower, and so that's why, you know, that pressure sometimes needs to be a little more forceful. You may find in different parts of the body, which we're talking about in our experiment, like those nerve endings might go higher up closer to the skin, or there might be more of them. There's a lot of different parts here that we could talk about. One thing I do want to note right here, there's a small muscle. And this small muscle attaches to the base of every hair you have along your skin. And that small muscle and that hair, if that muscle actually contracts, it pulls the hair up and the skin closer. And what that does is that's actually what causes goosebumps. Goosebumps are not actually bumps on your skin. They're actually parts of your skin getting smaller. All right. You could see the blood vessels in the diagram. One other thing I do want to point out is you can actually look at this. The skin contains multiple cell types. It has all of the different types of tissue that exist. So there's muscle tissue, there's epithelial tissue, there's connective tissue, and there's nervous tissue. And that's kind of an interesting thing to think about, is that, like, you know, something as what you think of as simple as your skin just contains all of these different tissue types. And so that's kind of a big deal. So yeah, that's your skin. I do want to point out the main purpose of your skin is to create that barrier between the inside and the outside of your body. Okay. And so there are very few openings to get into your skin. You have your mouth, your nose. Sometimes things can get into this pore right here, but you'll notice that there's sort of like a whole area around that that's sort of separating it from everywhere else. And that's really important because you really want to be able to control where there are entrances and exits to your body. Let's talk a little bit about why. So immunity is your immune system, rather, is when you have body structures that are there for the protection of pathogens. So breaking down that phrase is going to require a couple of things. So the first thing that we want to break down is this idea of pathogens. So pathogens are any type of substance, organism mostly, that will cause an infection in your body. It'll actually damage your cells and potentially destroy your body. Specifically, a pathogen is anything that will evoke an immune response. All right. So what happens here is you can have fungi that can cause pathogen infections. And like some fungi are like, oh, I have athlete's foot. That's a pathogen. That's an infection. But there are more serious fungi that can cause like lung disorders or all kinds of other problems. Bacteria is a very common one. We're all very familiar with things like strep throat or staph infections, which are actually when bacteria gets into your skin where they're not supposed to. So bacteria are a constant problem that we want to deal with. Viruses we're all familiar with, common cold, that kind of stuff. And you know that like viruses, like they can get in through your nose, through your mouth. They look for entrances that are not your skin. And then the final thing is there's a variety of other microorganisms, and some of them not so micro, that can infect your skin. Things like malaria, or a tapeworm, or a hookworm, or a roundworm, or any kind of anything from protista, or even some small animals, although those are less common, that can infect your body and try to live off your body as if it's a nutrient. And so you have an immune system that works together with your integumentary system to do its best to protect you from that. And so there's sort of a sequence of defense. So the first one is what we call non-specific defense. And this is barriers to access. So that's things like the fact that your skin covers your whole body and there's really not a good way in. All right. In fact, number one thing that causes staph infections is when staph bacteria that normally is on your skin gets in through a cut. All right, that's why whenever you have a cut on your skin, you always want to heal it, or not heal it, you want to wash it off, try to take care of it, keep it from getting super dirty, all right? So it's all about barriers to access, and there's also some non-subtle barriers to access as well. You know, like you swallow some sort of bacteria or fungus or something, well, you know, one of the barriers to access is the fact that your stomach is filled with acid and it's probably going to kill them unless they're specifically, you know, designed to live there. Also, like your nose hairs can help catch that stuff and keep it from getting into your nasal passages. There are a lot of barriers to access, but the chief one we discuss is sort of that epidermis of your skin. Now, the second step here is the non-specific response, which is what we call the inflammatory response. Now, in the next slide, we're going to get into some details with that. But basically what it boils down to is every time you have an opening that is forced through your skin, so like you get a little cut, you get a little, you know, wound, whatever, you'll notice that it gets red and inflamed, swollen, and painful. And that is actually not the wound itself. That's your body sending like random immune system structures there to keep you from getting hurt. All right, and we'll get into some details later. And then the final thing is the specific immune response. Now, the specific immune response is specific. What that means is your body basically has some sort of infection or pathogen of these types get in, and it needs to mount a specifically designed attack to destroy that pathogen. And that's the third level of defense. And that's why your cold lasts for 10 to 14 days. That's why sometimes when you actually get something like the flu, you're laid up for a while. Because it takes some time for your body to identify the attacker and manufacture a defense that will eliminate that attacker. Okay, so that's the sequence of defense. So let's start by talking a little bit about the non-specific action of defense. So here you have some sort of wound, right? So, you know, this looks like a pin or something pierces your skin. And you'll notice that with the pin comes bacteria. Now, that's not because the pin's necessarily dirty. It's because everything has bacteria. That bacteria could have come off the outside of your skin. The problem is that you don't want bacteria where it doesn't belong. And so as soon as there's damage, chemical signals get sent off. And you can actually see them sort of right here, isolated. And when those chemical signals get sent off, right, they end up taking that blood vessel that's nearby and sort of opening it up a bit. And then all these white blood cells, which are known as macrophages, come out. And they basically get up in this area and they eat everything that's there. Doesn't matter if it's good, if it's bad, if it's indifferent, they will swallow it because they want to make sure that it does not get past them. Now, for a whole lot of illnesses, that actually does happen. All right, that actually is enough to make sure that you don't get an infection, you don't get a disease, you don't get a problem. This phagocytosis, these macrophages eating basically everything that is inside your body. All right, and you could see this over here. They're doing it. Now, the reason you get the inflamed is because these chemical signals cause some blood to flow to the area so that these white blood cells can sort of leak out. All right. And then part of this nonspecific immune response is also platelets and other chemicals such as vitamin K closing up that wound so that nothing else can get in there. All right, and you can see here how this bacteria is getting eaten by this macrophage where it gets destroyed. Now, this nonspecific immune defense is basically like, destroy without thought. Just destroy, 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 destroy. That's the way that works. And so it's nonspecific because it does not matter what it is. Destroy, destroy, destroy. We destroy everything. You destroy it. We destroy it. We destroy it. Okay? And so there's no thought. It doesn't matter what it is that's getting in. It doesn't matter what it is that's getting out. It's just destroy it until the wound is healed so nothing else can get in. And that creates that sort of red inflammation as blood ekes in there. That sort of creates a little bit of that pain. And that pain's actually almost on purpose to make sure that you're aware that it's happened and that you can make sure you do your part to keep other stuff from getting in. Now, the other side of this is we also have specific immune response. Now, specific immune response generally happens when you get some sort of infection. So typically this gets past the inflammatory response, or maybe it's a virus that doesn't get identified until it's already taken hold. And so the nonspecific immune response, this one's going to go through a virus, but I just wanted to sort of talk through this, all right? So here's step one. Let's say we'll go with the virus, but basically your body identifies that there's an infection because there's proteins that the macrophages ingest. So what happens is, let's say you eat a bacteria. Your macrophage ingests the bacteria and puts the proteins from the bacteria on its surface. And then these white blood cells called lymphocytes, specifically T lymphocytes, come along and they interact with the macrophage, like, hey, you found anything? And with those proteins on the surface, the T lymphocytes are like, oh, wait, we do? And then occasionally if you have cells in potential infection areas, those T lymphocytes will go over there and interact with them and be like, hey, you found anything? You got anything? And those viral proteins on the surface, the T lymphocyte will be like, oh, wait, you do? And so here you could see that sort of stimulation where the cell is basically like, uh-oh, we've got an infection. Let's start notifying people. And sometimes those notifications involve giving off chemical signals as well. And that's where this interleukin is. And then interleukin starts other cells, all right, which eventually leads to number 5 right here, where it activates B cells and cytotoxic T cells. Okay. Now, B cells and cytotoxic T cells tend to be specific. So a cytotoxic T cell is going to be looking for the infected protein. So what that means is we set up here, the viruses put certain proteins on the surface of the blood cell. So that cytotoxic T cell is looking for those proteins. And anything with those proteins, it's going to kill it. It's going to destroy it. And so a lot of that stuff that you get when you're ill, like for instance, if you have a cold and you're blowing your nose, that's cytotoxic T cells, that's macrophages, and it's also cells they've destroyed. Okay. Now on the other side of this, you got B cells, right? And it says here, activated B cells. Well, here we go. This is the whole cytotoxic T cell we just said. And they run up and they destroy these infected cells. So over here you got these activated B cells. Well, the activated B cells are specific to the infected protein. Okay, so again, they are the one B cell that is a complement to that protein that's infecting your cells. That one gets multiplied, and some of them, you see right here, it says 8, get stored for memory. That's why you can't get an illness from a virus twice. All right, so if you get the common cold, the next time you get the cold, it's an entirely different cold. That's why if you have, say, chickenpox, you don't get it again. It's because your body remembers, oh yeah, we've had that cell. And so the next time you get infected, it's much quicker about eliminating it. All right. And then the rest of these B cells, and again, every stage here, these B cells are specific. There's one type of B cell that's being activated. These other B cells start secreting these proteins called antibodies. All right. And these antibodies are what's unique about the B cell. They basically just get shot into your blood. Okay. And they get shot into your blood and they start eating up they just collect around all these virus particles. And then the virus particles can't go anywhere, and your macrophages, those things that eat them, can come along and just swallow them because they're like, oh, you got those antibodies? Let me just eat that up and get rid of it. And that creates a system where the virus can no longer infect cells. So you basically have antibodies which stop the infection